Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Seriously in Business podcast. Today I have a lovely guest to share with you. This is an interview that I have never done before in terms of our topic, so I'm really excited to bring this one to you. And it's going to be spot on if you are in the stage of your business where you either already have employees or you're thinking and trying to work out if it's the right time to hire an employee yet. And if you do, how to actually implement things that are going to help that to work, help you not to waste money, help those people to thrive and to really love their job. So I'm interviewing Amy from Amy Jane HR. By the way, she's going to be changing her business name in the future. So if any of the links that I've talked about in this episode don't quite match up, just head to the show notes and we'll have the updated versions there. But she is a HR consultant, HR expert to really help small businesses to employ the right people and to do a great job of doing that, because she understands that business owners probably don't have people as their main area of expertise, so that is where she comes in. So let's dive into this episode. I cannot wait for you to hear what Amy has to say. Welcome, Amy, to the podcast. I am so thrilled to have you. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm really good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
I'm excited. I haven't had anyone like you at all on the podcast before, so I'm really kind of interested to talk about this stuff, especially because it's something that I had never really considered much in my business world until like the last year. I'm like, oh, maybe this is something for me. So I'm also here to pick your brains as a person as well as an interviewer. So, but first, I always start my interviews with the question of what does an average day in Amy's life and business look like? When Amy gets up to when she goes to bed, what's the kind of the schedule generally, knowing that it's always going to be different every day?
Yeah, for me, it's a 6 a.m. start. My kids head off to school quite early, so they're on the bus at 7:15. So
Wow.
we start the day quite early. But I nearly always start my day with a bike ride. So I will get the kids up and running, and if hubby's home, then I'll head off on a usually about 10K bike ride for my morning. And then I get back, and that's by then everybody's usually gone. So it's great. I get about an hour to myself, which is lovely to journal or have a cuppa in peace and have some brekkie. Before then I kick off around 8:30, and then we go into the busy day of work. And lately it's been a lot of meetings because everybody's been kicking off for the start of the year. But I usually work across a number of clients through the day. It can be anything from fair work claims right through to performance management and building new contracts for new businesses who are beginning to hire their first employees. So yeah, there's a huge gamut of obviously things in human resources that can grab my attention throughout a day. And I think that the COVID has really changed the value in human resources, and why having the right employees in the right positions is really, really important.
Oh, how
Yeah.
interesting. There you go. And then what does after work usually look like for you?
After work is usually getting kiddies sorted for the next day, after school activities, and the normal chill down routine. So have dinner and usually watching one of our favorite shows to end out the night.
Nice. I like hearing what people do after, because for me, in this season of life, I'm working in the evenings. Like that's my best work period. And I've talked to a couple of people where their kids are in school now and they don't usually work in the evenings anymore. I'm like, what a different season you are all in. So hanging
Yes,
out for that.
having high school age kids has really changed the way your day goes. They're a lot more responsible for their own things, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of things. I said to a friend on the weekend, they've got 3 small children under 4, and
Wow.
I said to her, they said, "Oh, what are you doing for the day tomorrow?" I'm like, "Oh, actually, I think I just might sit back and read a book." And they're like, "What
What's
is that
this?
craziness?" They're like, "Oh, I
Oh,
can't remember the last time I picked up a book," they said.
no, there you go. Yep, that doesn't surprise me. Gee, life is so different in different seasons. I love it though. It keeps it interesting. Keeps it. Yeah. One day I did have a stint where I was into bike riding for a little bit, and I went on like a 10K ride or something in the mornings. That was a nice time. I'll get back into that one day.
I've just got back into it this year, so don't worry.
That's exciting. Great.
There's always a new time.
There's horizons I can still conquer.
That's it.
Amazing. Okay, so let's dive into some HR stuff then. So, okay, let's pretend a listener doesn't have any employees yet, but they're wondering that maybe one day they should, or maybe are they ready to hire someone just yet, or should they hire a contractor instead? Like, where is a good time? How do we know when it's the right time to hire someone in our business?
Every business is going to be completely different, is probably the key thing.
Yeah.
It's also really important to, as a business owner, to really sit down and have a really good think about the bits that you don't like, because they're usually the bits that you need to move on first. So that might involve, bringing in a contractor to help with your social media or your accounting or those kind of things, and outsourcing those things. For me, it was my social media. The best thing I ever did was make the decision at the start of last year to outsource my social media to a virtual assistant, because it took that pressure off me, that groan that, oh, I don't want to do that this week, it really took that away from me, and it made my business feel so much lighter. So I absolutely encourage business owners to sit down and do that. What are the things that I really, really don't enjoy doing? Because that's going to draw them then into the things that they do love doing, and by outsourcing those things. The point of bringing on employee, there's lots of different parts that come into that. There can be the financial bit. So you need to talk to your accountant and make sure that you're making a good financial decision. There's also thinking about how you're going to employ them. I've had clients who have gone straight in and know that they have enough capacity and enough clients to go straight full time for a new
Wow.
employee. And then I've had other ones who have dabbled in casual employment for a long time before they then move on to hiring a permanent employee. So it's very, very individualized. Industry is very different. So if you're in the NDIS industry, quite often you only need a certain percentage of your day charged out, and you know that that person's covered. Where in other industries, there's huge ebbs and flows in their business. So that makes it really difficult to have the financial capacity to be able to bring a person on in a full-time capacity. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's huge differences between industries and different stages of business. I was only talking to my coach earlier today, and she said that she had listened to someone speak the other day who were a multi-million dollar business before they hired their first employee. So they built it to this huge business, very financially stable business, yet they'd still use contractors all the way up
Mm.
until that point. So you can structure your business in many, many different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been finding that as a business owner. I'm like, there's so many, like, you just, as someone who doesn't have a business, often you're like, oh, you have yourself. And then if you need more people, you hire a full-time employee or something. But there's so many different avenues. It could be a contractor. Like, yes, someone I speak to that's got another multi-million dollar business. She's only got contractors as well because she doesn't need an employee at this point. And I was like, it's so interesting, like the different ways you can structure a business yeah, and then the right times to choose to go like a full time or a casual, and then all the implications that come through all of those things, and then the financial things. And I feel like, do you agree with the phrase? This is one I heard once, that you kind of have to hire a little bit before you're ready in terms of workload.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that so many of my clients come to me too late
Yeah.
for lots of things. And it's not just hiring their first employee, it's that things have gone madly wrong with employee engagement or behavior. And it's all because they haven't put the policies and procedures in place ahead of time. They're rare gems, the clients that I find that do it proactively from the beginning. So often it is that they come too late, or they're already in the recruitment process, and then they go, oh, that's right, we need a contract at the end of that. But, there's wait periods. I and a lot of other HR consultants are very busy people. So fitting it into their schedule, there's usually a wait period there. So you need to actually be thinking a lot more in advance than you think you do.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. So such fun things. Because I'm just thinking back in with my business now. I'm like, I've got contractors at the moment, but I think I'll be putting people on, or at least one person on as an employee soon. I'm like, who's thinking about all of the things that this will look like, and yeah, all of these. What are the things that we need to think about before we bring on our first employee?
Yeah, so there's lots of system setup things you need to think about. You need to have your payroll system set up. You need to have it so that it, is going to pay their superannuation and payroll tax and all of those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
You need to think about the policies and procedures and how you're going to induct them into your business. How are you going to actually make them understand the way that your business works? What's the authenticity that comes with your business, and how are they going to continue and become part of that team? I think there's you need to think about further in advance. You need to think about how you're going to keep the person in the business. So what's your point of difference? We call it the employee value proposition. So what value? There's been a huge change in, it always used to be about what the employer was offering, and that would attract the candidates. It's kind of flipped around, and now it's like the employer needs to show the employee how they're going to fit in. How are your skills going to add the value to our company, rather than how we're going to add value to your life by paying you a good wage or providing you a good culture. So there's been a real flip in how you need to position yourself to attract really good, high quality candidates and employees into your business.
And then keep them there, because obviously if you find someone good, you want them to hang around rather than getting inspired to go elsewhere.
Absolutely. And there's a huge cost associated with that as well, because I think the figures are up around the 60 to 70% mark of a person's annual salary is how much it costs to bring them on again. So because it can take up to a year to get 80 to 90% efficiency out of a person. So you need to look at the fact that it's going to cost you money for the first year of having an employee to get them up to speed and working really efficiently in their role. And that's an investment you've got to make, because there's the investment of your time as well as their time, because you're going to have to pick up the slack in the meantime.
Yeah. So there's so many. Yeah, that's a very interesting stat. There's I would have expected it to be a little bit higher in terms of the efficiency, and I guess how quickly that happened. Would you say 8 months, 8 to 10 months?
About 3/4 of a year to a year. It's going to take them to get to around 90%. Depending on the role, obviously, there's other people that get up to speed really quickly and learn really fast, but then there's others that it's gonna take time. If you're hiring a grad, you might be looking at 18 months to 2 years before they're hitting anywhere near 90% efficiency.
It's probably good to have that as an expectation in your own mind as well, that you're not expecting too much of them and then getting disappointed by them when they're actually just doing the average job, I guess.
That's exactly right. And it's about having that support process in place, the check-ins, the reviews, having the open conversation about how they're doing, having the clear guidelines of a job description set out so that they know what success looks like. How can a person be successful in their role if you haven't told them what that looks like?
It's a really good point. Okay, I think this leads me into my next question a lot of how do we onboard someone in a way that does kind of set them up for success? Here's a checklist to of things we should really think through and look at as an employer to employ someone that's I remember even for after school jobs, you'd go and you'd get shown around by one of the people that kind of knew something, and that was kind of about it. I'm assuming there's a little bit more to it with some proper long-term employment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the process actually starts from the minute they accept the job, because you need to start building that rapport and that conversation with that person. Even whilst they're serving out their notice period at their previous employer, you need to make them feel important. You need to keep them informed about the process. You need to send them emails or introduce them to your company in the best way possible before they even start. One, because that will try and stop counter offers of their previous employer trying to keep them, because you're staying in front of their face. But it also,
I feel like that's a really good point. I've got a cousin right now who's switching jobs, and she's really, really excited for this new place because they must have, I feel like they've done this so well. And even their old employers don't go. the fact that they're really being intentional about it, like, this is why this is so great and we're here and can't wait to have you and all those things,
Yep.
make a big difference. That's
Yeah.
such a good point.
And I think introducing them on their first day to the rest of the team is so important because they become part of the team. Everyone knows you don't have to suddenly try and find out who Frank in finance is because he's been introduced to you on day one, you know. And having informal coffee catch-ups in the first couple of weeks, if you're that person's direct supervisor, is so important because they're the times when the person's going to say, you know what, this thing is really overwhelming me, or I really don't feel like I've got a good understanding of this part of my role. And those conversations are where you're showing that you care as an employer, but also they're feeling comfortable enough to share that they don't feel comfortable in their role yet. So those things, but there's also the formal things, all the things that people sometimes think are boring, you know. Make sure they've got their IT access before they start. They don't want to sit around for 5 days and wait for the computer to be turned on for them so they can start doing their job. Have them on the email lists, you know, get them their security tags so they don't have to be waiting for someone to open the door when they get to work each day. You know, it's really simple things like that and being really prepared ahead of time that can make that onboarding process so much smoother and such a good experience for a new employee.
Oh, hello. I'm interrupting this episode super quickly to let you know that we have limited availability to work with the team at White Deer Studio. If you want done for you graphic or brand support, that means doing your graphics for you. Anything from bespoke social media templates to launch graphics or a full branding package, our team are ready to support you. Just head to whitedeer.com.au/design studio to find out more. That's the color white, the animal deer.com.au/design studio to find out more. We cannot wait to work with you. All right, back to the episode. Yeah, and I feel like that first, I guess starting a new job is always going to be a tricky process for someone. But yeah, if you as an employer can make that as smooth as possible. And I love the idea of those informal coffee catch-ups. I feel like that's just such a great way to actually learn how they're doing and actually give them space to share those things rather than it feeling like, oh, I've got nowhere to go when things are really sucky right now. What do I do?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think setting out it might be a checklist. It might be an email that you send to them on their first couple of days, but really setting the expectation of like, this is how it's going to roll, you know, over the next 3 months, because quite often there's a probationary period. So over the next 3 months, this is the kind of process we're going to work through, so that they know they've got goalposts set of, you know, we're going to review in 2 weeks, we're going to get together and have a formal review and see how we're going. And in 4 weeks, we're going to get together again. So they know that even if they aren't comfortable in approaching you, that they know that they've got time set aside for those times.
Like, oh, I know this sucks, but I've got it next week. I've got that meeting, so I'm going to be able to work through that at that point. So it's not just inevitably bad for the rest of my employment.
Correct. Yeah, no. Absolutely. We've all been in bad workplaces before. I, even in HR, have had a really crappy manager, and, you know, it really impacted on how I choose to go forward in my life and how I choose to do my role, purely from the actions of that person. So you need to realize when a person's coming into your business that they're spending more time with you than they are with their family in most cases. So you need to realize that they're investing in you, so you need to invest in them.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a different question now then. So if we've had someone working with us for a little while, and we want them to stay because they're doing a great job, or we want to keep helping them to get better as they continue, what are some ways we can continue to cultivate that relationship and make sure that they are happy to continue staying with us?
I think it's really important to ask them a question: where do they see themselves in 12 months, 2 years, 5 years? Because you need to really make a decision about whether where they want to head is aligned with where your business is going. Or if it's not quite aligned, what can you change to keep them around if they're really worth keeping? Yep. So it's asking them, what training are you looking for? You know, what areas of your role are your favorite? and see whether you can grow those areas of their role so that they are they're spending more time in the place that they love. Those kind of things, and showing an interest is going to make them want to stay longer.
Yeah, that's such a good call because I feel like I would have a tendency to just assume that they're happy here or they'll probably want to leave soon and do something different, whatever, but not actually ask someone what they actually what do they say? Like, do they think they're going to leave in 6 months or do they want to be here in 5 years, but they want their role to look really different? And how can I then accommodate that if I don't ask them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I read a really good article, it was quite a while back now, but it stuck with me, is that you should always be building your bench. Basically, what it means is that no matter whether there's people within your business or people you've met outside, you should always be building whoever the next people that is that you're bringing into your business. So have an idea, a strategic idea of what's the next part of my business that I'm going to bring an employee in or bring a contractor in, and have that as a plan. You know, for me, I'm almost at the point ready to bring in a HR admin, because I'm almost at capacity. So, and I don't want to give away my extra days a week. I want to keep my boundaries, and because that's really important to me. So how can I continue to grow my business, and but still deliver to my clients to the highest level that I want to? So it's having that plan and putting it out in the universe as well. I'm a big believer in manifestation and believing that what you put out there is what's going to come back in. So I think if you haven't thought about that, you need to start. You need to start thinking further than you think in advance, of where your business is going. Don't sit there and hope and pray. You know, sit down and actually make a plan for where you want to go.
Guess those 5-year business plans maybe aren't such a bad idea.
Absolutely. We all hate doing them. Don't worry.
We do. And I feel like when you're a solo business owner, like, it doesn't really impact anyone else if you don't really plan. But I guess when you've started to bring people on, there's if your business fails, then other people are impacted by that.
Right.
Which is, I guess, a little bit scary.
Yeah, it is, and it's a responsibility. It's a responsibility that you've got control over. You know how another person is able to live their life and pay their electricity bill and put food on the table. So it's quite a responsibility, and you should be responsible enough to plan in advance so that you're growing rather than staying where you are.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And so if we've decided, hey, it's time to hire someone or I need to hire more people, I'm already in that hiring process. What are some, like, how do we find the right people? What are some steps we need to go through to make sure that we're actually, I guess it probably starts with knowing what you need and then being able to articulate that, and then the interview. And like, how do we actually go through that process of finding the right person for the job rather than just getting it wrong?
Yeah, because getting it wrong is horrible. It's a horrible process for everybody. So
Yeah.
we want to make sure that we're sitting down and really thinking about what we want this person to do. We then also need to think about where our ideal candidates are hiding out. If you're looking for a mum part-time, chances are she's not going to be hanging out at the pub, or she's not going to be on one of the tradie pages on Facebook. She's going to be in a mum's group probably, or somewhere like that you are allowed to advertise in. The other thing, so if you're looking for a tradie, they're going to be looking on Seek and Indeed and all of those kind of job boards. And I think what's really important to be able to attract those people is to be super authentic in your job ads. Don't necessarily use someone else's template. Speak from the heart, talk about your vision. You want to really inspire these people. Look at their job ad and go, I want to work at that place. I want to work at that place. So I think making sure you're advertising in the correct places is really, really key to finding the right type of candidate for you. And it's going to vary again hugely, because depending on what industry you're in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Like, even like if you're in the online space of different, like, a business Facebook group, or even on, like, if you've got a big following on Instagram, even on your Instagram, you could say I'm hiring now, like, and you're likely going to find someone that's already knows you and the business and what you stand for. So it's hopefully going to be a closer match, potentially not. How do we then go through, like, say we've had some people apply, we've popped the job out in the right place and we've had some people apply. Do you have any, like, tips of how to weed out the good ones from the bad ones?
Yeah, I think it's Usually I like to put a little test in my ads. So
Ooh.
I put a little test in there like that they have to answer a specific question when they apply. Or sometimes the test can be that you have to apply via a certain way. So if you advertise on Seek, but you only want to receive applications via email and they apply by Seek, then they haven't followed the instructions, have they? So it can be putting little tests in there like that. For you guys like graphic designers and stuff, it could be the fact that their resume needs to reflect their authenticity, you want it to look pretty,
Mm.
or, reflect who they are. So it can be doing things like that depending on your industry. You're going to be able to do a testing process purely by how they do their resume. Uh,
Mm.
Leading on from that, sometimes you can do things like ask when they get through that first initial stage is ask them to do a video, answer these 3 questions in video, because you're going to get a really good feel for who they are through that process. And then I think having your questions and remembering that sometimes getting the right personal attributes in a person is more important than the technical skills, because you
Yep.
can teach the technical skills. If they don't do it exactly how you would like them to do it, you can teach them how to do it. But if they're not dedicated and authentic and have good ethics and those kind of things, then
It's a lot
there's
harder to teach that.
it's very hard. Yeah, and almost impossible to teach those things. So I think in a tight market where there's not a lot of candidates and they've probably got the power, it's very, very important to not just look at the technical skills.
There you go. That's some really good tips in there. Um, some really good tips. Okay, and so we've picked out like 3 people. We're like these are the gems. Are there any tips for then that interviewing process that you would have to then really make that right decision?
Think making it as relaxed as possible is kind of key, because they're going to present their best self when they're relaxed, and also you being relaxed. So for some people, they get so nervous if it's the first time they've ever done an interview, and having another person there so that you can pause in an interview, having a structure so that you can stick to the structure and know what you're going to ask next, is probably really, really key as well. And mixing up those questions around them talking about their background and providing examples is super, super key. So they can draw on their vast experience to give you an example and demonstrate what you're asking.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. As someone who's been self-employed, I don't think there's many people like me in the world, so this is not even that important. But like, I've had, I think, 2 job interviews in my entire life, and the only other person I've worked for other than myself is for my mum's business. So it's like, I don't have a heap
Yeah,
of experience. So if one day I need to start doing interviews for people, I'm like, cool, I have no idea what's happening. I hope that you do. So here's the interview.
they're going to be more experienced than you are.
They really 100% will be, unless I'm hiring like a someone like me, which is probably, I don't think many of us exist that have really worked really nowhere.
Yeah. most of
Benefits of
us were
being self.
most of us were 15 when we had our first interview and started
Yeah.
AFC.
Yep, exactly. Whereas I just said to my mum, oh, can I work doing the coffee cleaning at your work now? And she's like, yeah, that's fine. Go and talk to Janice. And Janice gave me the job, which I didn't have to interview for. She just knew that I was the boss's daughter.
Oh, that's amazing. Perfect. It's the easiest way to get a job, isn't it?
It's really worked quite well for me, except for the fact that when I had interviews later on in my career, I did not get them because I had no clue how to interview. That's fine. Didn't want the jobs anyway. I wanted to work for myself, so it worked out fine. It's
That's
fine.
right.
Oh, that's so good. Okay. Do you have any final, like, if you were just a favorite tip you have going around at the moment in the general world of HR and hiring or working with people or anything like that? Something you're just really passionate about at the moment?
I'm really passionate just about people being focused on the fact that people are people. Like then they have lives outside of work. They have things that are impacting them. Just because someone comes to work in a bad mood, they might have had a really rough morning with their kids, or they've had a really tough commute to work. You need to like have some empathy for that, because people are people, and they're whole people is the thing that I'm about. Like, there's so many facets that make up a person. Their job is not what defines them. So I think as employers, we need to be very open to that, and communicate it in the right way. Ask the questions. Ask if they're okay.
Yeah.
If they're showing that things aren't, if they're not performing how they always have, there has to be a reason for that. And you can approach it in the right way, in a people-focused way, so that you can be not contributing to their stress levels. So I'm just so passionate about that we have a focus on that we are all human, and that we all have competing priorities, and that some days people are going to turn up and give you their 100%, and other days it's just not going to happen. So taking that into account in a business is hard, because you want everyone to perform and to deliver to the highest quality all the time, but you need to be aware of the fact that that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I love that. That's a really good one to finish on, because I feel like, that's kind of the heart of all of it. And the way to be a really good boss is to, actually care for people, and as you said, it's hard for a business, because like you're running on numbers and you're running on performance and you're running on this, but at the end of the day, the people you're employed are people, not robots.
Yep. People are your most important asset. So you need to make sure that you utilize them well and realize that they're not robots.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, so if we want to work with you, if we're thinking maybe we want to start hiring people or actually do a better job of the people that we've already employed, how can we get in touch? How can we work with you? How can we learn from you?
Sure. You can join me over my website, which is amyjanehr.com.au, or on the socials at amyjanehr. And I'm always sharing some beautiful insights, some updates on legislation, and all of those fun things to make sure that everybody's trying to make sure that their compliance is correct, and that everyone can learn something new, because sometimes it's the simplest things that can make the difference.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your insights with us. That was really, really wonderful. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
So thank you for joining us for that episode of the Seriously in Business podcast. I hope you got as much out of that as I did, whether you are needing to implement this stuff now or whether it's something to come back to in the future. Perhaps earmark this podcast if you are planning on hiring someone maybe in the next year or two. Although if you're listening to any of Amy's advice, you probably need to get onto that sooner rather than later and start making plans and start getting and booking in a HR person, all the different bits and pieces, contracts, such fun. And so I thank you for listening. If you like this podcast and want to hear it more, make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you leave a review if you're enjoying it as well. I would love to hear what you have to say about the podcast, and leaving a review helps more wonderful business owners to find our content as well. So thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next week for a new episode. Bye.